I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. I'm here today with Adam Keown, Global Chief Information Security Officer at Eastman, a global specialty materials company employing approximately 14,000 people around the world and serving customers in more than 100 countries. To learn more about Eastman, visit eastman.com. This interview is sponsored by KnowBe4, the world's largest security awareness training and simulated phishing provider that helps you manage the ongoing problem of social engineering. To learn more about KnowBe4, visit knowbe4.com. Adam, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Adam, we recently published the top 5 cybersecurity facts, figures, predictions, and statistics for 2021 to 2025. Before we jump in and ask you some questions about that, we'd like to get your background. I believe you spent more than 10 years as a special agent with the FBI. You had an impressive career leading up to your position with Eastman. So tell us a little bit about your background and what you do today.
That's correct. I spent over 10 years in the FBI as a special agent working all types of cyber investigations. And I've also spent over a decade in critical infrastructure sectors and most recently in the chemical and manufacturing sectors. Today, I'm the CISO of Eastman Chemical, which is a global specialty materials company with over $10 billion in revenue.
So, Adam, you've seen cybercrime from the perspective of law enforcement and now guarding a large enterprise. So, I want to ask you, just how bad is cybercrime? And we could look at some figures. We publish numbers to help people put it in perspective. But when you're dealing with such large numbers, it gets to a point where the number almost doesn't matter. We want people to understand just how serious this is. We measured damages of about $6 trillion USD globally in 2021. And if that was measured as a country, it would be the world's third largest economy. Needless to say, it's a staggering figure. And, we see that growing over the next 5 years. Do you think that, this is overblown at all by the media, or is cybercrime that bad?
Cybercrime, I believe, is that bad. One reason is because there's many crimes that go unreported. I can tell you personally, I'm friends with a small logistics company here in East Tennessee. The CEO is a friend of mine, and when discussing with him, he had a recent ransomware incident that never even got reported. So I'm confident with the numbers that are being reported, those are underrepresented numbers.
Right. That's very scary. I think that's reinforced by a lot of breaches and attacks we're seeing that are reported so late because they have to be reported. But we cover a lot of this, and it's very common a year later, 6-8 months later, for it to surface. This morning we were discussing a cyber attack, and no one would have known about it unless it was in an SEC filing. So so much of this is just really buried. Let me ask you about spending on cybersecurity. That also is a very large number, and I'm more interested in whether that money is being spent in the right areas. We look at the cybersecurity market; it's grown from about $3.5 billion in 2004 to a market now that exceeds $1 trillion cumulatively over the last 5 years. We tracked it, and for the next 5, it'll be closer to $2 trillion. So my question isn't so much, are we spending a lot of money to combat cybersecurity, but are we spending it in the right areas, in your opinion?
I believe we are, by using key metrics or maturity frameworks like the NIST cybersecurity framework to understand where our capabilities are missing and where we can fill in those gaps. The overall view of cybersecurity, as we know, has been an afterthought in the market. And due to that afterthought, we have a larger amount of spending in order to catch up where we have not had cybersecurity in the past.
Now, you speak with a lot of CISOs, I presume, peers of yours. I know that you're active in the community, you're out at events. Would you say that's universally the case, or do you have colleagues who are challenged around budget and getting the support they need from an executive level?
From my unscientific view, from colleagues in the market, it's all over the place. It can, traditional indicators would be that financial markets and maybe even governments will spend particular amounts, whether high or low, in certain areas. But we all know that the size of the agency, the size of the company can often make a huge difference. As an example, I went to an B-Sides InfoSec conference just recently here in East Tennessee. Well, my cybersecurity budget is larger than some of the IT budgets represented at that particular location. But in discussions with additional CISOs who are in the $10 billion revenue market that I'm in, uh, our most of our budgets are comparable, and are addressing the gaps and the capabilities that we all need to increase on.
Now, do you worry for small businesses, and you have a unique view into that coming from the FBI? I'm sure you know what it's like to work with companies where either they don't have a CISO or security leadership, or maybe some cases where the companies are so small that they're stretched just to have their own internal IT support.
Correct. Many small companies, as you said, they don't even see a difference between cybersecurity and traditional IT, and they don't realize that that expertise is completely separate from that market. And one of the cases I worked in the past actually involved a small business where the CISO had been scammed by a business email compromise situation, and he told me with tears in his eyes that he didn't know how he was going to make payroll for his couple of hundred employees the next 2 weeks. Those type of situations are very dramatic, not only for the employees but for the CISO, or excuse me, for the CEO who's representing them, and that CEO, wants his employees and cares about his employees and wants them to be able to, make their bills and cover their own personal financial obligations. And so, to your earlier point, without understanding that cybersecurity is its own niche, or in my opinion, a superset, not a subset of IT, where you are most successful when you know multiple areas around technology, and even outside of it, to include the legal market and privacy items. Your The companies don't they think that the IT shop can just perform these cybersecurity skill sets when they can't.
And one of the biggest concerns we have, Adam, is around the worker shortage. And, we've had people from law enforcement. We've had the head of the FBI cyber division come on with us. We've had, folks from the NSA and, other three-letter agencies. We've talked to CISOs at, organizations of all sizes. And universally, we hear it is a challenge to recruit and to retain people in a very competitive market. Right now, we've got about 3.5 million unfilled positions. If anyone needs a visual on that, in cybersecurity, it would fill 50 NFL stadiums. So despite having a budget, is that a challenge for CISOs at large organizations?
Yes, it's a challenge across the board. I can tell you that the advantages that we have in large organizations is our ability to partner with schools to be able to reach out to other IT colleagues and pull in individuals who maybe haven't traditionally been a cybersecurity professional, but they have other technical skills or even business audit type skills. Being able to pull those additional areas in or partner directly with the schools has been the best advantage that I have seen in my years. So the smaller businesses, unfortunately, are often left with with scraping by or trying to get folks who have professional capabilities that they wouldn't normally have access to.
Adam, for the first time in about a decade, we have an optimistic view of the future insofar as filling these positions. A lot of it comes from a pipeline we have coming out of universities that we, did not have previously. There are just, so many programs producing so many more graduates, so much interest now in cybersecurity. But yet, even in a competitive market, what is it that young people are looking for, in your opinion, who either are coming out of school or may have a few years of solid experience with so much opportunity out there?
The ones that I have spoke to, and I've also helped educate, helped have been a part of the educational program of several of these schools. The ones that I have spoken with, they want to ensure that they're making a difference,
Hmm.
that they have an impact on the larger activities of the company, that they are not only being able to serve and to specialize sometimes in an area, but also that fulfillment that they have made the world a better place. And that's one of the reasons, that I choose specific companies to work for, and in the past, I've even chosen ones not to work for
Right.
because I want to ensure that I'm serving society.
And I suppose there's, kind of a challenge there too, because on the one hand, you might have people looking at, say, healthcare. The idea of going to work for a hospital where, theoretically you could help save lives now. When you look at, some of the ransomware attacks and the outfall from that. On the other hand, people going to work for those companies may not be working with cutting edge platforms. They may not feel like they have access to all of the latest and greatest tools and may not learn as much as a result.
That's correct. At the same time, I think there's a huge advantage in being a part of smaller companies and even later on, or vice versa, starting your career with a larger company and getting with a smaller company later. I can tell you that from not only from folks I've hired, but even from my own professional experience, my time at a small utility where I was involved in everything done digitally or in the IT world helped me become better well-rounded and understand aspects of the business that I would not have received going directly into a large enterprise company.
So, Adam, we started to track ransomware in 2015, or at least compiling statistics around it. And I think you may have left the FBI not long before that, but still, I'm sure had exposure. Before we get into some of the statistical information, what was your view on ransomware back then before it, became the gigantic threat it is today?
When I was still in the bureau, a lot of our discussion was not only focused on ransomware, but also terroristic threats across the internet and how someone could harm us using critical infrastructure, which is also part of our discussion even in today's times. But specifically narrowing in on ransomware, it was still causing havoc uh, among many businesses of all shapes and size. And the focus was trying to help businesses understand how to protect their systems to prevent the overall ransomware from attacking them or from having a large impact if it actually got into their environment. One of the most recent publications that I would encourage anyone to take a look at is called Protecting Your Networks from Ransomware. It was put out by 14 US government agencies, and it was a document, describing things like authenticate your inbound email using SPF, DMARC, and DKIM, a lot of email acronyms there. But we still struggle today, unfortunately, and that's a recent publication. But we still struggle today, even working with smaller companies and even some larger companies, just encouraging them to do simple things like authenticating in incoming email.
Right. Well, what's worrisome is we're paying so much attention to this. Some of the top people in the field have been, very vocal. A lot of great material has been published. Media outlets are covering this. Ransomware is in focus by the right people, and yet it's growing dramatically, 50 times on an annual basis. If you go back to, 2015, last year the world suffered about $20 billion in damages. And we see that continuing to grow. Statistically, a business has been hit by ransomware every 11 seconds or, give or take, but it's that frequent in 2021. So does it concern you that with all of the attention we're paying to it, all of the advice that we're dispensing, that it's still growing?
It's always concerning that any type of cybercrime is growing, including ransomware. As we discussed a little earlier, there are so many basic things that we can't, fundamental activities that we can't get folks to take on or to include their IT teams in taking on and preventing inside of their company. That's that's where the biggest struggle is, blocking and tackling 101, unfortunately, are still fundamental activities that haven't taken a hold in many of our companies.
Do you think that boardroom executives, C-suite executives are paying more attention now in large enterprises compared to a decade ago? After suffering cyber attacks, even if they haven't, seeing the growth of ransomware, is that a focal point for them? Does that come up in boardroom discussions?
100%. It is coming up more and more often in all boardroom discussions, especially around audit committees and across the entire board of companies. What is happening is you've got legislation, especially here in the United States, that has been proposed multiple times that Congress hasn't yet approved or got completely through the United States process. Beyond that, what has happened is you have U.S. agencies like the SEC or Department of Homeland Security who are coming up with their own practices or direction that companies should take in protecting their systems. And when you see the likes of the SEC proposing, still under proposal, proposing that all board members who have cybersecurity experience that should now be in public filings to include recent breaches and such. That just shows you that everyone is taking note of cybersecurity, and it's not going to slow down.
So, Adam, we talked about a lot of statistical information. You brought up, some really important issues around governance. Let me ask you about humans, people, and specifically employees. Employees working for large organizations, mid-sized organizations, and even small organizations. How important is it for us to train those people, train the employees, and how much of a difference can it make?
It's vitally important that we do it, but I don't believe the difference is huge. It is enough to it is enough to make a difference, and let me explain. When it comes to these in teaching your employees, a single employee can submit a real phish that has come in that protects your entire organization from a huge impact from ransomware or stealing credentials. So that can be invaluable at times. Additionally, though, we still have businesses across America and even the globe where folks are not back to the fundamentals and even experimenting or teaching their people about the fundamentals. When we started this conversation, we talked about a small, 100 employee logistics company that I'm familiar, personal friends with the CEO in the area. And they were not even doing phishing when they got attacked last year. They weren't doing phishing exercises. They had never even talked about those. So when you get to items like multi-factor authentication or real headway, they haven't even considered those areas of fundamentals yet. So we still have a long way to go to get folks to where their systems have basic blocking and tackling in place.
Right. I wonder how much of the problem comes down to simply not taking a lot of really good advice that's out there. We've tracked information alerts that the FBI puts out. We've been to FBI HQ. We've spent a lot of time disseminating information, helping, get the word out. They've done a fantastic job educating the community to the best of their ability, and specifically around certain threats. For example, business email compromise. You touched on that earlier. And yet, I wonder, are most employees aware of that? Are most employees, in a position to help their company, or is it still falling on deaf ears?
I think that most employees are in a position to help their company, but they're just not familiar or not aware. Where strong, successful cybersecurity teaching programs are at have often been around helping an employee understand how to protect their personal assets, their personal bank account and such, using things like multi-factor. Then employees want to dive in and help. When it comes to businesses, the mistake I have seen over the years is around fear, uncertainty, and doubt, where every cybersecurity professional or IT professional comes in and says, you need security because of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You don't want to be this next,
Right.
you don't want to be this next company that has a major issue, when that's not the talk or the dialogue of the business. When fear, uncertainty, and doubt or confidential compromise is very much the talk of a pharmaceutical company or a government agency, but it's not the talk of a manufacturing plant. It's not the talk of Amazon.com. These other organizations, when you want them to understand why cybersecurity is important, you have to go back to the fundamentals of cybersecurity, the CIA: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Amazon cares a lot about availability. They understand that if their website is down for minutes, that they are losing millions of dollars. And so that's the focus that you have. Even in my current company and in working in the utility industry in the past, conversations that I had with leaders in those businesses are around availability. I want to, it's about planned and unplanned downtime. I want you to understand that we can plan your downtime and patch and get the right updates in place, or unplanned downtime, which they fear the most, would could cause them to lose a lot of revenue and not be able to produce the product or keep electricity flowing like they need. And then from confidentiality and availability, you move over into the integrity section. So conversations with industries like banks and such should be around that integrity focus, because if the Bank of America's website goes down, would it be a tough situation? We all agree it would be. But if everyone found out that a specific bank, their accounts were all $10 off or a random number off, there'd be a run on that bank saying, "Let's take all of our money out because they can't keep it straight how much I've got in there." So it's important to understand your audience. Now, all businesses care about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. They all do. But there are key aspects to having conversations with those business leaders that you want to hone in on one of those conversation areas so that they fully understand why we're taking cybersecurity measures that we are.
Well, we recently had Craig Froelich, the CISO at Bank of America, on with us, so we're going to make sure that he watches this video and here's what you had
Great.
to say. You touched on Amazon, so I have to touch on the cloud. Before we close out here, do you think the world is a safer place when you consider how much of our data is being stored in the cloud? Estimates are that by 2025. 50% of the world's data will be in the cloud. That could be, public clouds run by Amazon and other companies, private clouds. Are we in a safer place? I hope.
I believe we are. There are many companies that have what we call a cloud first initiative, and have had it for a few years now. And the cloud offers us not only capabilities but monitoring and I don't want to say quick fix, but that's the word I lean to in order to protect some of the major issues that are happening around cybersecurity. The easy example is around Microsoft Exchange and in email. So if a certain vulnerability is found in Microsoft Exchange, Microsoft has patched it before almost anyone else knows it, and those customers are already protected. But the on-prem solutions of Exchange haven't done that yet, and they just get it when the patch rolls out. So just that one example of patching, and then other examples of monitoring and such. Moving to a cloud first initiative is a strong methodology for protecting systems, data, and people. And the more we do that, the better off overall we are going to be as we go forward.
So, Adam, we're going to see each other again soon. We'll be at the RSA conference. I know you will be.
Yes.
When you go out to conferences, and RSA in particular, which they do a phenomenal job, what are you looking for when you're out there? Are you networking? Are you looking at new technologies? What do you hope to take away from the conference?
The RSA conference and many other conferences provide a fantastic opportunity to not only see new products, but to ask some tough questions. One of the questions I always ask is, what is your tool? What is the problem your tool is trying to solve? And tell me what your problem does. Tell me what your solution doesn't do well. And having questions like that in your pocket to bring out to vendors and to help them and to help them explain to you their particular tooling and how it would help your environment always works well. Additionally, networking. having the opportunity to discuss particular problems or areas where folks have an issue. We all have many of the same issues. I'm a part of 3 different CISO groups that I regularly attend and have discussions with because of the benefit I get out of those groups. And we all can't have the solution, but we all can share, especially when we start moving the right direction toward a particular solution, and help each other out. And so I encourage everyone to continue to share and to talk more with your colleagues, not only at these conferences but even outside of these conferences.
Well, Adam, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on with us. We'll look forward to catching up at RSA and hope you can come back on here with us again sometime soon.
All right, great. Thank you. I appreciate the time today.
I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. Joining us today was Adam Keown, Global Chief Information Security Officer at Eastman, a global specialty materials company employing approximately 14,000 people around the world and serving customers in more than 100 countries. To learn more about Eastman, visit eastman.com. This interview is sponsored by KnowBe4, the world's largest security awareness training and simulated phishing provider that helps you manage the ongoing problem of social engineering. To learn more about KnowBe4, visit knowbe4.com. You can keep up with all of our media at cybercrimemagazine.com.